Hey everybody, John Sneisen, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And what could possibly be worse than being extorted for almost half of your money for your entire lifetime, but to try to retire and not have any money saved up because you depended on the banks and governments, a bunch of criminals who feed off of the poor and impoverished, that feed off of people's debts. There's some news coming out of the Netherlands right now, and it's really, truly infuriating just to think about the notion of all of you people out there that are working so hard, work your entire life to save up while being extorted on a daily basis, and then you get extorted one final time and you're left, well, basically in the gutter. And as this article out of Zero Hedge says, Netherlands headed for unprecedented crisis. Millions of retirees face pensions cuts thanks to the ECB. Oh, the good old ECB. They recently met not too long ago with their new Christine Lagarde in a creepy room. We didn't report on it at the time, but the ECB is usually conspiring into how to make people more dependent and extort people more. But anyway, let's get into this article. It says, when one thinks of pension crisis, the state of Illinois, with its woefully underfunded retirement system, which issues bonds just to fund its existing pension benefits, usually comes to mind. Which is why it's surprising that the first state that may suffer substantial pension cuts is one that actually has one of the world's best funded and most generous pension systems. According to the FT, millions of Dutch pensioners are facing material cuts to their retirement income for the first time next year as the Dutch government scrambles to avert a crisis to the country's 1.6 trillion euro pension system. And while a last-minute intervention by the government may avoid significant cuts to pensions next year and a revolt by trade unions, if only temporarily, the world finds itself transfixed by the problems facing the Dutch retirement system as it provides an early indication of a wider global pensions funding shortfall, not to mention potential mass unrest once retirees across some of the world's wealthiest nations suddenly finds themselves with facing haircuts to what they previously believed were unalterable retirement incomes. At the core of the Dutch cash crunch is the ECB's negative interest rate policy, which has sent bond yields to record negative territory across the Eurozone and crippled returns analysis while pushing up the funding requirements of Dutch pension funds. Ahead of a parliamentary debate on Thursday on this hot topic issue, the Dutch Minister for Social Affairs and Employment, Wouter Koolmees, will write to lawmakers to outline his response to the pension industry's problems, the FD reported. In order to offset the ECB's NIRP policy, Shakti Rambaran Mishri, chair of the Dutch Pension Federation, which represents 197 pension funds and their members, said that contributions might have to rise up to 30% over the next few years, an outcome which will lead to outrage among existing working age employees who will suffer a surge in the pension costs. Absent a dramatic increase in benefit contributions, as things stand, around 2 million people are facing cuts from next year, she added. Predictably, trade unions have already held protests and strikes this year over the potential cuts to pensions and have threatened more action if the government does not step in. And I quote, "We expect some relief next week, and if not, we will mobilize," said Tur Elzinga, lead pensions negotiator at FNV, the biggest Dutch union. The Netherlands, one of the Eurozone's richest nations, is hardly alone in this predicament, as the ongoing debate reflects broad concerns about the impact of low interest rates among the Eurozone and Japan, as aging populations and longer life expectancy have put pension systems across the world under great strain. A report last week from the Group of 30, a club for current and former policymakers, warned of a $15.8 trillion shortfall in funding to support the aging populations of the world's 20 biggest countries. And if there's one way to guarantee riots among the world's richest nations, it is to inform pensioners that their benefits are suddenly being haircut. In some ways, the Netherlands has one of Europe's most generous retirement systems at its core. It represents a basic pay-as-you-go state pension, as well as employer-run pension scheme, which together provide workers with about 80% of their average lifetime wages when they retire. The US and UK have similar systems, but Dutch pension funds are more generous and must use a lower risk-free rate to value their liabilities, forcing them to hold more assets. Unfortunately, the lower Dutch risk-free rate is not low enough, and as a result, about 70 employer-run pension funds with 12.1 million members had funding ratios below the statutory minimum at the end of September, according to the Dutch Central Bank. And here lies the rub. If funds have ratios below the legal minimum for 5 consecutive years or have no prospect of recovering to a more healthy level, they must cut their payouts. Interest rates have rebounded slightly in recent weeks, but many funds are still facing cuts. In other words, in making a select handful of European stockholders rich courtesy of NIRP and QE, Mario Draghi is threatening the pensions of hundreds of millions of retired European workers. John, let's go to you about this. This is so crazy. It's sick, it's criminal, it's disgusting, it's fraudulent, and to think that on top of that, the global shortfall is set to hit around $400 trillion by the year 2050. That's over 4 times the global GDP, about 5 times actually. What do you think about all this, John?
Well, the problem here, Josh, is that we created a system where the government is going to take care of us instead of us being individually, dependent on taking care of ourselves. So the government is basically saving up money for us when we can't, because we don't have money because they tax us to death and we're in tremendous amount of debt. That's the problem. But let's get back to the problem with the pension system, and that's of course the low interest rates that we've had, and then that's combined with negative interest rates that we've seen a lot of places. There's no income to be made. So what has happened? We actually covered a Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, being close to 70% in equities globally, owning 1% of the global equities market. So what has happened is that they moved to equities. They move to the stock market to get more money, or they go to a very much more riskier income assets, which is close to speculative bonds, which is almost in the junk bond territory. And of course, companies like GE, which is basically going bankrupt, is one of those companies that they invest in to actually get a little bit of yield. The problem is that even with that, I was looking at all the corporate debt that was pushed out in 2018 in the United States, because that's where most of these companies invest. They invest a lot in the United States as well. These pension funds out of Netherlands. They are looking at, it went from before in 2010, it was 78% of all debt issued in 2010, I believe, was, investment grade debt. But then now in 2018, only, it was 78 point something percent that was actually junk. So it's not even investment grade for these pension funds. And the other problem is that because they promised so much to people, and people are living a lot longer because they didn't account for any of that, right? When they created these pension schemes back in the day, the Netherlands retirement age is increasing. So this is from Wikipedia. The sources here, this year, last year in 2018, it increased to 66, I believe it was 65. Then in 2021, it's 67. And then in 2022, it's 67 in 3 months. So you can see how rapidly they have to increase this. And it's not like life expectancy just jumps through the roof here. Well, it kind of is, because we've been able to find so many ways to keep us alive now. So we live so much longer than, when they actually created the initial, Social Security or whatever local pensions are in Norway, Canada, whatever it is. The problem is a lot of these pensions, even, in Norway, the old age side of pensions, people are retiring on them, but they don't have money. I remember even my grandmother back in the day when the pensions were better, she was still poor because she worked all of her life, but she still had a crappy pension. She barely had money to afford. So luckily she had family around her that took care of her. But the problem is that we become dependent on the governments to take care of us. And of course, the government has always mismanaged things that they try to, manage. And there's no other difference with these pension funds.
I wanted to actually ask you about that, John, because obviously, like we've gone into before, the people born in 2007 on average are set to live to about 103. That's pretty unsustainable. But what really gets me the most is that dependence, because this system is dependent on the dependence of the masses. They love people in debt. They love people impoverished. They love people that are completely dependent on them on their knees, begging for help. All order out of chaos, right? They create the problem and come in as a solution, like a good plague, I guess you could say. That's the only thing I could really think of. It's a plague. It's a cancer. It's a disease. It's fraud. It's criminal. Can you go into, the level of dependence people have? Because, I mean, people don't own their own money anymore. They just give it over to these banks and the governments, often by law, unfortunately, for them to manage for them. And these entities really, really do well and sustain themselves well when they force everyone onto their knees. So what do you think about what this issue says about the vast dependence of the populace on the system and not saving for themselves?
Well, yeah, no, the number one problem is because we've been robbed left, right, and center from inflation and debt on the one side to taxation on the other side. So that's government's fault right there. Then second of all, it's, of course, the governments have created schemes around the world to to actually lure you into these pension type of funds. Like in Canada, we have the RSP. We have it's called I believe it's called SVB in Netherlands. It's the 401ks in the United States. And a whole bunch of other just pension schemes that, the government gives you a little bit of a tax rebate at the start. Then, of course, you pay all the fees and everything to the bankers that run the scheme. And then on the other side, when they've grown your money a bit after you contributed, if you stop contributing to your fund, a lot of times you're not even making a return. Like my mother-in-law tried to do that. She tried to cut off, the amount of money because she's like, oh, well, I don't need to contribute so much money anymore. But then suddenly the money started to go down because she didn't contribute. So it's a whole scam built upon this. And actually in my book, Not the Greatest Economy in the World, ? I have a financial advisor that very, well-to-do financial advisors for business people here in Manitoba that actually wrote, I believe it's like 5 or 6 pages about just that scam, how they created this, the governments and the banks colluded to then, slave you and corral you into these RSPs, 401k systems, because not only do they have their, CPP or whatever, or SVB in Netherlands, these government pension systems, but then they corral you into these like semi-private pension type of systems that was built by the banks to rip you off with all the fees inside of it, and then the government to give you an incentive on the one side, but then to rob you on the other side with income taxes. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to also get into some of the solutions because there are many, and I think one of the things that people have to do is be independent, and one of the things would be preserving purchasing power with, things like gold. And I want to go into this article first, though, because, there's a lot of criminals out there that like to appear as a savior and come in and swoop in and save the day while really just enslaving you further. And as this Cointelegraph.com article says, Dutch central bank, world will need gold if entire system collapses, and they basically said gold will rescue the economy from collapse. And as they went into here, it says, and I quote, if the entire system collapses, the gold stock provides a collateral to start over. Gold gives confidence in the power of the central bank's balance sheet. That gives a safe feeling, it says. So I'm not going to go into the whole article or anything, but I find this interesting and almost a little mischievous, because if you think about it for a second, we have central banks, the biggest criminal cartels of all mankind ever, coming in and saying, yeah, gold might be a good thing. But I think what they're trying to do is kind of mold people in favor of, maybe the banks will hold gold, or maybe there's going to be a gold standard, still print more IOUs than you have gold, et cetera, et cetera. It's more control, and it puts people back in this situation where they say, oh, I don't need to buy gold. Maybe the central banks or the banks will buy gold, or maybe they'll take care of this for me. It's more dependence. It's more criminal dependence. And that's why I want to go to you, John, about the importance of just owning gold, in your opinion, as an individual, privately, outside, which, by the way, private ownership of gold has skyrocketed in recent years versus public and bank ownership. So that's a good side of the story. But what do you think?
Well, the thing is, gold will save the economy for whoever owns the gold. not for the peasants that own assets, that are denominated in euros, which it is in Netherlands and so on. They would lose, mass amounts of value if they go to a gold standard. People don't understand that. So it's not that, the central bank will save you. And even, the Dutch central bank is very aware, because they actually repatriated 130 tons back from the New York Fed back in this was in 2014, when they actually over time they've taken back 130 ton and physically hold it in the country. So it's one thing of having this. It's great. It's great for the government to of course have a gold standard. But how about having that private gold standard, as you said? How about actually protecting yourself and be able to not be a slave here? And actually, have a gold or have crypto in order to actually protect your own wealth, because that's what you need to do. You can't have, the government is not going to protect your wealth. They would win in this scenario where they go to gold standard, but then you will lose because you hold fiat denominated assets. So that's the number one problem here. You need to be able to diversify yourself and not be dependent. Not like with me, I don't have anything in either the private type of RSPs or anything actually in any. Well, you're forced here in Canada if you have an income to pay into the CPP, which is a total scam. I call it the Canada Ponzi plan in my book.
Yeah.
But
they call it a scheme for a reason.
Yeah, of course. And the thing is here to actually protect yourself with knowledge and understanding of business, other things, so you could actually invest your money and grow and be able to protect yourself over time, because that's the most important reason, is to be able to focus on diversifying your portfolio and not having entrusting the government and these pension managers, because the pension managers of these government funds, they are the bottom of the crop when it comes to, be able to understand and make money for people, because they were the ones that were lazy and didn't want to, do too much in school. And they were usually the least, people that wouldn't end up in the big hedge funds and so on at Wall Street. So they are just, basically taking, Wall Street's coming over. It's like, hey, take this credit default swap as collateralized loan obligation. We will be able to give you X amount of return. It's AAA rated. Look how well that went for Norwegian pension funds for our RMs in Norway. We had I think 10 of them went bankrupt because they betted on these CDOs, which was total crap. And of course, it's happening again. They're out there, pushing their scams onto these pension fund managers, which there's no understanding about investing in the first place.
Yeah, well, and let me just say that this is more of a lesson for you than how criminal and disgusting these entities are that take advantage of you and your families and the most vulnerable people in society. This is far more about you guys. This is about what you can do to stay independent and responsibility is the most important part. I mean, responsibility is freedom. Freedom is responsibility. You cannot have one without the other. So it's really important that you hear this news and think of it in a positive light about what you can do as an individual to break free from that system, not be dependent on that, and not end up at the golden years of your life at the very end suddenly finding out you have no money and you have to work for the rest of your life, and that while you slaved for half a year for the government as it is, now you're going to have to slave for the rest of your life. And it's really, truly a sickening thing to see this kind of stuff, and it's all about being independent.
Yeah, and actually, the financial advisor guy that wrote my book, he actually said, he's talking to so many people that had zero financial education. Right. They come to them, they saved all their life just to then find out that they're owning 30 to 50% in income tax at the end of it. Nobody told them that, right? So yeah, well, what a great thing to trust, these advisors and the government of taking care of your money.
It's absolutely disgusting, folks, and every single one of you watching this should be disgusted. I should add that my family, half of my family came from Weert in the Netherlands, and I wanted to point that out. That's where the blue eyes come from. Anyway, as far as being independent, you have to look at all these options. There's more solutions than there are problems in the world, and that's what we want to tell you about. I mean, it's good to be scared, but it's more important to be the one making the central bank scared, making the government scared. The ball should be in your hand. You should take advantage of the knowledge that scares you and turn it into a positive for you. It's all about what you do next, and I think it's important that you look at food, water, shelter, self-defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block, gold and silver as wealth insurance, in my opinion. This isn't investment advice. This is just my opinion. But I mean, look at history. It says a lot. And look at cryptocurrencies that are properly decentralized, fundamentally valuable, useful, and blockchain infrastructure technology that's also decentralized. You could use blockchain for good. You could use it for evil. It's our responsibility to use it for good. And I mean, most cryptocurrencies are terrible, but a few are really changing the world forever and providing a security blanket for so many people out there. So I want to make that point as we finish this off. There's so much you can do as an individual, but first of all, it's understanding money, understanding the central banks are criminals, understanding that the government's criminals, understanding the normal banks are criminals, understanding that it takes you to be the change you wish to see for the sake of you and your family and the future of your family. I think it's so incredibly important for you to take action as a free individuals. Live free, live free, and basically you need to spread this information to people that you know. Make people aware of it. Try to do what you can to help your friends and family. It comes down to you folks, no one else, so no one's gonna save you, and those that come in and claim they're gonna save you, you should be taking a second look at, being a little bit skeptical, if not completely skeptical, because these people are usually trying to take advantage of you for their own benefit. Break free from the system. Don't be a slave. And anyway, I want those that are still watching this video, first of all, thank you very much for watching this far into the video. It means a lot. It says that you are not a slave and you care about this kind of stuff and you care about your future and you care about the future of your family. And I want you guys to write in the comments, because it helps the algorithm and it shows me that you've actually watched thus far into the video and aren't just one of the negative Nancys that are commenting at the very beginning without watching anything. I want you to write end the DNB. That's DNB. End the DNB. That's a Dutch central bank. And I appreciate it. Now I know that you're not a slave and that you actually care about this information. So thank you very much, folks. I appreciate everyone watching. We'll be getting back at you with much more on this situation. Around the world, the pension issue is incredibly, enormously important, and it really comes down to the most simplistic bottom line, and that is you need to be independent, and it doesn't get any more complicated than that. It really is just about being independent and not depending on other people. They take advantage of you and they want to see you on your knees like a good little slave. If they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, pushing you into perfect servitude to them right where they want you. Don't allow it to happen, folks. Anyway, I appreciate you joining us today, John, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.
Be the change.
Like what you see here at Wham, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, Don't forget to subscribe to us on The Alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app, that's flote.app, at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at WAM, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.